Hi everyone. Religion is the opium of masses. The statement by Marx has reverberated with me all my life. Religion makes valuable contributions to a society. However, when it is allowed to predominantly define the identity of a person or a group, then it becomes a divisive force. Now, what has been happening in this nation for past few days is truly terrible and absolutely reprehensible. An uncalled for and irresponsible statement was made by a lady spokesperson of the ruling party at the center, which has been condemned by all quarters. Action has been taken against her. FIR has been lodged against her. The said party and center government have distanced themselves away from the said member and the statement. However, if still there is a group of people who continue to harbor grievances against the said lady or the center government or the said political party, then they are free to resort to legitimate channels to redress their grievance. However, worryingly today, there is a fringe element which is engaging in acts like making rape threats, death threats, orchestration of public execution, and virtual beheading. Now, these things cannot be ignored, and perpetrators of these acts must be found and punished. My problem today is not with the religious conflict, because I truly believe that in India, nobody's religion is under threat, neither the minority nor the majority. And if someone so fervently feels that their religion is threatened, then they must knock the doors of the High Court or the Supreme Court, because after all, it is their fundamental right, and show that their argument has any merit and credibility, instead of being an idle social media warrior or pelting stones. My basic problem is with violent protests and violent protesters. Every few months, on some or the other issue, this nation's safety, security, peace, and progress is derailed by violent protests and violent protesters. Violence and threat to violence cannot have any place in a civilized society. A civilized society is based on the notion of rule of law and abhorrence to violence. This is the basic difference between the state of nature and state of law. Forget about a state, forget about a democracy. For a civilized society, we need to avoid violence and threat to violence. However, in this nation, we have educated people who support violent protest, who support and encourage violent protest. We have educated people in this nation who support and protest destruction of public property. This is why India has a law which forbids destruction and damaging of public property and punishes it with an imprisonment of 5 years or fine or both. The Supreme Court has even laid down guidelines on the matter, which amongst other things lays down that a person engaging in destruction of public property must make good of the same. Another worrying trend is that whenever the nation is mired in such serious and sensitive situations, then the so-called intelligentsia and the conscience keeper of the nation jump in, not to cool down the situation and cool down the tensions, but to further add fuel to the fire. The police forces are made the main villains of the scene. Now, our police forces might have 100 flaws, but when they are dealing with mob violence and violent protest, then they are putting their lives on line to safeguard the lives and property of other peaceful members of the society. In many nations, incitement of violence against police personnel is a crime. But in India, when the police force is dealing with such perilous situations, the so-called intelligentsia engage in making incendiary comments against the police force. Now, the examples of the same are abundant, but I'll just give you two. A well-known lawyer is calling out, and self-proclaimed social activist is calling out the UP police as criminals in uniform, Why a seasoned lawyer will not move the judiciary if he notices an act of abuse of power or irregularity on the part of a state agency is beyond me. Another example is of a well-known journalist who is calling out Ranchi police resort to firing on protesters as an as a state orchestrated murder of innocent people of minority community, because their blood runs cheap in this country. Now everyone is aware of the situation at Ranchi, how it spiraled out of control, how the police personnel were even fired upon. Nobody's blood runs cheap in this country, not even police personnel. And Jharkhand is not even run by BJP, it's run by Jharkhand Mukti Morcha. And Hemant Soren is a very anti-BJP person who has blamed the BJP for everything. Talk about deception, talk about disinformation, talk about incitement of violence, talk about threat to public order. But no action is ever taken against these people while they continue to vitiate atmosphere of the nation at such critical junctures. So what exactly is their solution to this problem? Do we not need police forces to maintain the law and order in this country? Then let's pack them up and let's save up on our taxes. Or is it that as long as these violent protests happen not in their neighborhood and does not endanger the lives and liberties of their near and dear ones, they must be allowed to run their course? Or is it their statement that, is it their point that violent protests are desirable against certain actors? So what is the solution? Because in India, we want the social media to be self-regulated. We want the press to be self-regulated. And the Editors Guild of India has been really covering itself up with glory time and again. The judiciary is again overloaded with litigation. So the times like these really need an independent and impartial commission which can look at all cases of incendiary speeches, whether they are made by politicians or journalists or so-called social activists, and take appropriate action against them. Also, there is a serious need for the central government to lay down guidelines on how violent protests and violent protesters are to be dealt with and what punishment must be meted out to them. This nation cannot be allowed to be held hostage. The safety, security, peace, progress, present, future of this nation cannot be allowed to be held hostage to lawless vandals. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.